What's going on, people? Welcome to King Pilled. We're just a mere 30 minutes late going live.
That's on time.
This is Aussie time. Well, it turned out I was a little late because I was smoking a cigarette, and then Jason was a little late because he didn't get the link when I sent it to him. And then we've spent the last 20 minutes sitting here trying to figure out this audio issue. So we need your help.
Demons.
Yes. Tell us if you can hear a talk back on Jason's end when I'm talking. If there's an echo, because I can hear the echo.
Am I clapping back? Am I clapping back and talking back? Is there an audio? Is this thing on? Hi, how you doing? Hello, folks, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, mesdames and messieurs, welcome.
Yeah, so everything sounds great from Jason's end for me now. The other alternative, if you guys can hear the talk back, I think that's more annoying than what it was doing if we turned the echo cancellation on, which is it just randomly suppresses Jason's voice all of a sudden every little bit and then brings it back up again. So it's not unlistenable, it's just annoying. But we're buying a little bit of time of talking here, primarily with me, to see if there's any talk back. You guys let us know who are watching live, and then we'll settle on something. Jason, do a little bit more talking.
Hi, I'm Jason Mironchuck, over from the host and creator of Mironchuck Now, the Goat Father, here to enlighten and entertain all my Mironchads, my Mironchuds, and my Mironchuckles. I know some of them are in the chat. I see some of them there. Matt and I do have a Venn diagram. Kamala Harris will be very excited about these shows. The Venn diagram, the overlap of the King Pilled and Mironchuck Now audiences are fantastic because we are scaling the mountain. Ladies and gentlemen, I used to be on 2-bit. I used to be on the 2-bit mountain. It was a nice mountain. It was a mighty mountain, lovely mountain. Nothing wrong with that mountain. It was fine. It was good. But it's old. It was an old mountain. It was crumbling. It looked. We needed refurbishing. It just wasn't doing it for me anymore. I looked over yonder because I had raised to the crest of 2-bit mountain. I looked over yonder and I saw Space Mountain. I was like, "Ooh, maybe I'll do a Ric Flair. Woo! Climb Space Mountain." I said, but then I looked over yonder. Past Space Mountain, I said, what is that? There's even something mightier, something more majestic, rising into the heavens, Excelsior and beyond. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Mironchuck Mountain. I can hear the echo now. That's a fucking problem. So I gathered my goats, my Mironchads, my Mironchuds, and my Mironchuckles, even the Mironchuckles. You need sometimes a weak chain. You need people who you need to guide up. You need to be able to pull some people up to feel more useful, to give back. It can't all just be for the elites. It has to be also for the plebs, and those are the Mironchuckles. We're pulling them along up. They're with the old goats, just pushing. Up the mountain we go. We are at the foothills. Trust me, rebranding the middle of a major push on YouTube is horrible. Some people would. Let me finish this. Some people would look at the numbers and go, oh, disaster. And I'm like, no, opportunity. Opportunity knocks because we are scaling a greater mountain, ladies and gentlemen, and fuck YouTube. So, 2025 will be the year we're off YouTube, or using YouTube as it should be, which is how Willie Brown used Kamala, how I use how I use my bookmarks over on X quite often. The most amazing invention ever. It was such a godsend when I stumbled upon that. I think I told you about that, Matt, when I first bought a thing on X. I was like, oh, this, back when it was like $8, I'm paying the extra, and with the exchange rate, I'm paying extra. But God damn it, I'll fast for an extra day a week, whatever, 5-6 days, just for those bookmarks. They're amazing, but they're so amazing that I use them too much. So I go to look for something, and I'm like, fudge. where is the thing? And YouTube,
I know that pain.
Right, and next is like spurging out because I'm pushing the limits. I'm breaking a server just with my bookmarks alone.
Someone said in the King Pill Telegram a little bit ago that the having all the browser windows open is the white man's ceiling bird chirp. I guess
it's my
bookmarks goes with it.
It's my first IT. My inner Indian goes, well, have you turned off all your 5 million tabs? Have you saved something to a watch list? I'm like, oh yeah. Why am I laggy? Oh, because I have the entire internet open in my tabs. That maybe I should do something about. What's all these things down here? Oh, I've got multiple tabs. I got multiple screens open. I've got, like, every time I flash it on the Google sign, there's like a file cabinet worth of shit, and each one has 1,000 tabs open because I don't know.
If you guys
talk, I'm talking.
If you guys want to witness a man gradually descending into absolute mind melting splendor, you need to go over to Mironchuck now. Jason is in fine form tonight. So
when we're done this, we'll hang out and talk. It's good stuff.
We have we're both working on our own projects, and in parallel, it turns out there's some cosmic significance to that. You know what else there's cosmic significance to is, I don't know if you'd thought about this, but some of the deep spiritual symbolism of you being the goat father, leading the goats up the mountainside, because you're leading the goats from the land of the goats to the land of the lamb, from goats to sheep, and you're accumulating an audience of sheep who will happily you're accumulating an audience of goats who will happily be turned into sheep. You'll go from the goat father to the shepherd.
I'll get some sheep too. Don't threaten me with a good time. I got lawns. I found out that goats actually aren't good for lawns. They're above eaters. They like to graze, so they'll strip a tree or something like that. Or plants. You got plants, no problem, right? If the grass is over a certain level, they're good with it. But they don't like. They're not below eaters. They're above eaters. So I might have to get some sheep just for my lawns.
There you go.
Luckily, I have access, but
you've got the connections. So we're streaming this members only on the YouTube channel. If you're watching this later on, then
I'm sorry. There'll be pictures of me in a suit with one of those big shepherd canes.
You're gonna have some Gandalf vibes, like Tom Selleck Gandalf. Lex, get to work.
Just need a black guy who can fly a helicopter. I'm key.
So we're streaming this members only stream on YouTube. It will be dropping later on. It'll drop first to Substack, kingpill.substack.com, and then it will go out to Gen Pop as an audio podcast. So if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever the podcatchers have grabbed you, then do us a favor, give us a 5-star rating and review. And you can join me every middle of the day at some point, Monday through Friday, on YouTube and X with my show, The Astrolabe, where it's a variety show. I do tweets and videos and whatever's caught my eye, whether it's enraging or wholesome or inspiring or sobering. Just try to keep up with everything that's going on and give you guys a little look at what's coming across my Twitter timeline or X timeline, as the case may be. So for those of you who may be hearing this for the first time because the idea of Trump being installed pulled you in and you were like, well, what's going on there? This is part 2 in a series. Don't know exactly how many there are going to be. We're evolving the series in real time. But the first conversation Jason and I had, we kind of laid out the background of what led us to the point of seeing things this way, that Trump is being installed. Now, I know the majority of you guys who watch the majority of what we talk about, you're probably familiar with a number of these things. But I know this is also a subject that the idea that Trump is being installed is kind of radical to a lot of people. And it's a term that was used initially when Jason first posited that. He was using it provocatively, intentionally, to get people's attention, get them to kind of do them. They were like walking along and what's that? He's pulling them in. So you did a stream recently with good friend Stormy Waters, and first of all, you can tell people where they can find this particular stream. But at the beginning of it, I was listening to it, and Stormy kind of paused on the idea of Trump being installed, and you guys went back and forth on that. Mm-hmm. So can you elaborate on that a little? First of all, tell people where they can find those streams, and then elaborate on that.
We'll go over to Gumroad, and I'm sure Matthew is going to do me the favor by putting the description links in the description below.
Yep.
But go over to Gumroad and look for Tales of the Shadow Empire. And that's chapters 1, 2, and 3. Chapter 3 is the conversation that Matt's alluding to. That's only available for that package right now. Eventually, it'll be out on other places, but I'm using it as the carrot on the stick. And I don't have to beat you with it, but it's there. And that conversation really is, it's entitled The Shadow Pill. And a lot of people are asking after the first two conversations, like, what do we do? And we kind of teased it. We always kept meaning to try to get to the what do we do stuff in the first two chapters, the first two conversations. But then we got derailed with other stuff. And it deserves like a solid, I think we did half hour, 45 minutes or whatever on it, specifically on that subject. In that talk, and we cover a whole bunch of other stuff too. So you go check that out. It's on Gumroad. It's $40, but here's the value you get. You get all three chapters. Basically the streams themselves. A little bit of audio fixes just to enhance the audio a little bit. Stormy just got a new mic, so that's actually better for the third talk as well. And a few little visual cues, but nothing much. And then you get parts 1 and 2 of the data cinema versions that the Excellence of Execution, Lex Blanca has been producing along with me, but all the credit goes to him, really. They're brilliant. They're amazing. It's what we're calling data cinema. And that term's already been in use by someone else, but his stuff sucks. Our stuff is amazing. So I'll do a show about that coming up on Mironchuck now as well very soon. But you can get access to all those copies, plus the audio copies of the first 3 conversations, just the regular, not the data cinema versions. And you also get a link to a Telegram group that's private, but if you go over there right now, all the stuff that's in that package is already on the Telegram group, and I will be updating it free of charge in that group as we do different versions, as different conversations happen, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It'll all be there. So essentially you buy that $40 package once, and you get pretty much unlimited free access to all the other updates that are going to be going on with that series. So it's as much value as I can pack into one package. And I know $40 is a bit steep, but when you do all the mathematics and all that stuff, it's also allowing me not to just pay bills, but to start to reinvest back into essentially what we're going to be building, I think, is a studio to handle this data cinema stuff going forward with much bigger ideas as well. So stay tuned for all that. So
just to put a fine point on it, what you're getting with that $40 is effectively like an ongoing, updating, graduate level course on memetics and geopolitics and economics and finance and covering. There's vastly more subjects. It's a steal of a deal.
Yeah, and also just to keep in mind that in about a week or so, if it all goes well, I'll be sitting down with Stormy, Dark Enlightenment, and maybe one other person. We'll get that confirmation hopefully soon to talk about the City of London, which is not just the city that's called London, but the City of London that's inside of London. And yeah, that's a big one.
Those who know.
That's almost a linchpin of the Shadow Empire that we're building to. So, it's a big one. And if you buy the $40 package, we'll stream that live into the Telegram group, so you'll have absolute early access to that before we do anything else with it. So it's value upon value. It's as much as I can give you and still pay bills. So there's that. So please go over to Gumroad, check that out. Links I'm sure will be in the description below, or go to my X account. Find me on all the platforms. You can get access to it. It's not that hard to find. So, yes, in that conversation with Stormy, I said Trump's being installed. And the pushback he gave was that term installed. And I understand and I respect not just Stormy, who I respect a great deal, but I also respect that when people hear that, they think I'm saying the votes don't matter. And that's partly true, because I don't think the votes matter in the way people think they matter. They actually matter more, but in a different way.
I think that's actually, and that's what's great about using installed here in a provocative way, because it kind of serves as an on-ramp to parsing out this new developing reality about the role that data plays in elections, and the role that elections are now playing with respect to governance, and the different sort of geopolitical conflicts that are happening and the way they're echoing down through the more local or national level conflicts. It's a great way of getting at that. So I think I fully endorse the use of provocation in that way. So what's the I know that when the pushback that Stormy was giving you was ultimately you guys were saying the same thing, and you ultimately came to that conclusion. But it was interesting because it's, like I said, kind of an on-ramp into parsing out what exactly does it mean for Trump to be installed now, and what are you meaning when you're saying that?
So one of the things we covered in the very first talk in the shadow economy, at the very end of that talk, is we went through Trump's election promises. So he started talking about the Carlyle group, and that's actually was the thing that Stormy and I had a 10-hour talk over 2 days before we recorded anything. And I knew there was something to be said there, but I just didn't know what. I didn't know what the show would be in that sense. And then he put out a tweet talking about the Carlyle group, and that caught my interest. I leaned forward, like, okay, that's important. And my instincts, thank God, have been very, very good. And again, this is not from me, this is from above. So it's like anytime something pings, I know now to pay attention to it and to do my diligence. So I did that, and I looked into it, and I was like, okay, Stormy, we got to talk, because this Carlyle group thing was the linchpin, I felt, that was behind the PayPal mafia, right? Which is, connected to Jamie Dimon, connected to these world banks, connected to real big giant power. The Carlyle group, just for a quick recap, they're the group that came together at the late stage Reagan administration and bought up an absolute crap ton of these small military companies and factories that were going to go out of business because the Cold War was over, mostly specializing in ballistic missiles. And so they bought all those guys up. And that's essentially, in many ways, that's the military-industrial complex. Like, that's the lifeblood. Because the U.S. military can't really do much without all these little tiny private contractors who handle everything from logistics to R&D to building to armament supplies to everything. Okay, they're the infrastructure. So, and they wanted to do Star Wars. Remember when Reagan was talking about Star Wars, doing a big Iron Dome over America with all these missiles? That's the Carlyle group. They showcased that during Desert Storm with Bush Sr., who then went on after he was voted out of office to go work with the Carlyle group. His son, when he took office, the first 6 months or almost a year of his term before 9/11 happened, all he was talking about was ballistic missiles. In fact, he tore up the International Ballistic Missile Treaty that they had signed with Russia, which surprised Russia so much. Like, what, are we building missiles again? They're like, oh, we're building missiles again. So they started building missiles. Russia too. And then all of a sudden, some dancing Israelis happen. America gets quagmired in the Middle East for a while. But what happens is Russia's still developing missiles like crazy, right? A huge portion of their GDP is going to missiles because they're like, we don't know what you're up to, but we need to be up to it too. Which is also why. Yeah, go ahead.
That's a really funny. I've laughed about this every time I've heard about it. The how frickin' exasperating it would be to be like, all right, we've got this ballistic missile treaty. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna tear it up because we're going ham now. So we tear it up. We're going ham now. Russia's like, okay, we make missile, and then Then all of a sudden, everything gets yanked away. All the resources and money and investment all get poured into this giant black hole in the Middle East. And Russia's like, well,
it's still make missile.
Yeah, right. It's just such a delicious cosmic irony. And think about how freaking personally exasperating that would be to the guys who were motivating that tear up of the treaty in the first place.
Well, flash forward a little bit. So then you get to Obama, right? And what does Obama do? Well, Obama manages to piss off and fire or exclude a whole bunch of the Joint Chiefs of Staff who leave or are dismissed. And where do they go? Well, they go work for private military companies owned by Carlyle Group. Plot thickens. Carlyle Group, this is something you can look up on Google, right? It's not, you don't have to go to some esoteric sites to find this out. If you look it up, you can find out that there's a 700,000 man army, a secret army being funded by who knows, right? It's usually a dangling participle. That's the Carlyle Group too. And there's a 700,000 man army armed to the teeth with all advanced weaponry, just sitting in a bunker somewhere. Or off on doing adventures, which we don't know what, right? So, look at Article 47, Trump's election platform. Number 8, whatever number it is. I'm trying to do visuals, but number 8 is he promises to build an iron dome over all of America, made in America. Who's that signaling to? Drill Baby Drill is signaling to Texas Oil. Getting rid of the EV mandate is signaling to Elon Musk. And many others. It's almost as if Trump is basically his entire platform as a patronage network to a counter-elite, which isn't really, counter-elite is kind of is not an accurate term because a lot of these guys are really well embedded. But for one reason or another, they've been sidelined or pushed around. Hey, do you know who canceled the Star Wars program? Bill Clinton in 93. You know who called it a massive waste of time and made sure it couldn't get any funding? Joe Biden.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Well, isn't that interesting? Huh. Hey, do you know who green-lighted and gave Larry Fink and BlackRock basically unlimited access to fund treasuries to basically back up his real estate grabs and all that stuff? It was Janet Yellen, a Biden and Harris person. And you know who screwed with Larry Fink at the Jackson Hole Economic Symposium? Because I know you want to get to this, man. Jamie Dimon.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you want to get to a recent report from Reuters, God bless, the bastion of information here, that would signal that Jamie Dimon isn't on board with certain things. And I'll let you get to that, and that may or may not be true, but whatever has been said and whatever he's doing seem to be a disconnect. And we're only interested in what people are doing. I don't really give a crap what people are saying anymore, because I've heard a lot of things. Hey, we lived through 2020, didn't we? We lived through hearing a whole bunch of stuff one day and got denounced and reconfirmed the next week or a few years later. So I don't know about you guys, but I'm sick and tired of listening to what they say, and I'm just looking at what they're doing and putting that together, and that all that stuff leads me to believe that Trump's being installed by a very powerful group. These guys are organizing and financing and getting him ready to be installed. And we can get to all the different data points that individually may not be that impressive, but you start to collect them and combine them with this general thesis in mind. And suddenly, if that ain't true, then I don't know what is. Like, if that doesn't come to pass, then okay. Like, sure. What else? Aliens from the outer space are going to land. It's going to be like the freaking Watchmen all over again. I don't know, maybe. But
So here's the report that Jason's referring to. I had a couple different people who tagged both of us in this and asked us about it. So here's our response. This was from the New York Times report and then passed on by Reuters was the one that I found. In private, however, Mr. Dimon has made clear that he supports Vice President Kamala Harris and would consider a role, perhaps Treasury Secretary in her administration. He has also told his associates that the former president's 2020 election denialism remains close to a disqualifying factor. Those views were shared by 3 people who asked not to be identified discussing his politics because Mr. Dimon was speaking privately. Mr. Dimon isn't making his stance known publicly because he's fearful that if Mr. Trump is victorious, he could retaliate against the people and companies who publicly opposed his run, his associates said. That's a concern shared by other powerful corporate executives and not without reason. Mr. Trump has begun to increase threats of political retribution in recent weeks. So my read on this, before, and I made sure that I cemented this read before talking to Jason to get his read on it, was reading through this, understanding everything that we've talked about, and I know the majority of you guys, like, we're not going to be able to rehash every single data point all the way along. So at this point, we're in part 2 of this series, and
I've got all day. I don't know about you.
I do not have all day. There's ample background material for you to consume to completely get up to speed if this conversation is completely new to you. All of Jason's conversation with Stormy, Pete Quinones' conversation was Stormy, all the work that Jason and I have both done on the PayPal Mafia, all these different contingents that we've been following for as long as we have. There's so many different little data points that all form one big massive data point.
Let me just say this really quickly, okay? If I'm wrong, if we're wrong, then we deserve to be wrong, okay? We have done the work in order to at least be deserving of being wrong. We didn't just like fart out a thing, just randomly like, I think something you thought, right? Just to get your. I'm not James Lindsay here trying to aggravate people. I don't care if you agree or not. This is not I'm not rhetoric. I'm not trying to convince you, right? I say something that's a little bit salacious, and I understand it's salacious, and I could have just written a paragraph instead, detailing my minute little thoughts. But I'm not a fucking millennial, so I'm not doing that. So, or a libertarian. So like, screw it. I'm synergy. And here's the thing. I like to talk. So I will explain to you for volumes. And then when I explain it all, people are like, well, can you be more concise? Yes, Trump's being installed. There's a conciseness. There it is, okay? There it is.
Right.
One little paragraph, one little line, one little sentence. And if you don't, I don't know. But, sorry, I'm getting animated just because I feel like getting animated because I'm feeling good.
Here.
I'm feeling hopeful. Ooh.
So reading this, knowing, like, seeing Jamie Dimon through the eyes that I've come to see him, I also should mention Tom Luongo and Phil Gibson. These guys have also been very prominent in putting some of these pieces together. So what this sounds like to me, fully agreeing with Jason saying, there's what he's saying and there's what he's doing. So even if you take him at his word that he is saying these things exactly as they're portrayed, but here's the thing, I think it is exactly what's being portrayed here. In a conversation, imagine this. Mr. Jamie Dimon is standing there talking to a couple people, and there's some staffer or some like doorman or whatever, a secretary nearby. And he's like, "Oh yeah, of course I support the vice president. She's the vice president. Of course I support her. I want her to be successful and do great, and I want her to make great decisions for the country. And if she's going to be the president, then here, I support the president. I'm a good American." This is exactly what he would be saying. Would you consider a role for Treasury Secretary? Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. If my president calls me to serve my country, then absolutely, I will give it consideration. And then he's also told his associates that the former president's 2020 election denialism remains close to a disqualifying factor. Very interesting phrasing. It remains close to a disqualifying factor. That's such an odd way to write that. But close to a disqualifying factor, this again, it sounds like the exact same thing to me. That it's like, oh yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if I could support Trump, because that election denialism thing, that's real concerning. That's got all the people real concerned. Hold on just a sec. I got to say goodnight to the little man.
Oh, let me just fill in a gap here, okay?
Yeah, go.
Why? You know what tells me that I know this is probably BS? Why on earth would Jamie Dimon, other than maybe just being polite and as Matt's laying out, just be like, well, if someone's if Susie Cream Cheese is asking me a thing, I'm like, I'm just going to blow some smoke up her bum. Because why would Jamie Dimon, a man who can move markets with a stick-it note, a man who's put all his time and attention into his bank, who's invested all of his money into that bank, who that bank is an extension of him, Why on earth would he take the demotion to be the what? The treasury who? What? under a flaming coked out retard of administration? Are you out of your freaking mind? Like, you know what's better than winning gold in the Special Olympics? Not being retarded for 2 seconds. Having both legs working. Trust me, as someone who's having a hard time walking, trust me, it'd be nice to be able to walk around without pain. I miss those days. Those were good days. But you know what? Like, it's still better than winning gold at the Special freaking Olympics. Like, Jamie Dimon's going to do what? He's going to step down. Lay this out for me, okay? Please. Let's do this fantasy land for a second. Jamie Dimon is going to step down as CEO and chairman, and he's going to go work for the Harris government.
You know, when you put it that way.
Look at this face.
He is not amused. So yeah, this is a good example of why the no fucking black pilling. It's not like we're pinning all of our hopes on Jamie Dimon. No, when we're evaluating our worldview here, you can't just be yanked and tugged by every little news drop. There's a clip that goes around of me saying that. You can't just get yanked around by each little thing. And I'm not saying the people who sent it to us are. They're like, oh, I wonder what this means. And I had to stop and think about it for a second. I was like, okay, is there anything I'm missing here? Yeah, no, this seems pretty obvious that it's just, this is someone close to Jamie Dimon is leaking something that he said, and he's just speaking basic political speak by a high-level businessman who knows how to play the game. What's interesting to me, in fact, really, is that this is a story that's being repeated. Why is this being reported?
Was it right next to the story about someone in the Trump administration for 4 years ago saying that Trump said Hitler did something good? Was it right next to that story?
It was pretty close, yeah.
Probably right, like just below the crease, right, or above the crease, whatever, or somewhere along the crease, because probably the same publication, right?
Yeah, right. I don't know. I don't remember if it was on the same day or not, because I think this one might have been 2 days ago or so. But the stories were released at a similar time.
Yeah, by the same sources.
Yes. So what it tells me, the fact that this is actually being reported as a story actually indicates that there's something to Jamie Dimon that's important, where they're trying to create this impression that, oh, Jamie Dimon is in Kamala's camp. Don't you want to be in Kamala's camp? Because the average person doesn't give a shit what Jamie Dimon thinks. The average person doesn't know who he is. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people who are listening to us right now don't know who he is. Like, we know who he is because we've been nerding out about all of this.
CEO and chairman of JP Morgan Chase.
Yes, right. But the vast majority of people don't know. So this isn't a news release for the common person. This isn't a news release for us. This is a news release to try to move other powerful people, to try to give the impression, try to lend some legitimacy to Kamala, to all of the powerful people who are abandoning being associated with her in any way.
Well, it's also bait, right? Because they say this now. What's Jamie going to do? Is Jamie going to just let it go, or is he going to go? I never said that, or counter signal it. So I don't know. Chances are he just basically ignores it.
Yeah, that's what I would expect. I'd be very surprised, very pleasantly surprised, but very surprised if he said something about it.
Well, because the other thing too is that these guys are never taught about politics. They're actually apolitical because they don't care who's in the White House as long as the White House is doing their job, which is get the fuck out of their way and leave them alone. But as soon as you don't leave them alone or start doing some plans, they're like, no. Go watch if you follow me on X, there's a clip now from the Data Cinema version that Lex put together, which is brilliant, of basically, using AI to put Larry Fink and Jamie Dimon with mustaches in the same room with Janet Yellen, and basically saying, Larry Fink laying out the BlackRock plan and Jamie Dimon going, nah, that doesn't work for me, brother. And here's the thing. Here's another reason why he's not our friend, right? Jamie Dimon doesn't really seem to care, or whatever. I don't know his intentions, but he's doing it anyways, of raising interest rates, which is hurting you and your family. But he's doing it to screw with Larry Fink, to engage in basically a hot economic civil war with Fink and BlackRock and Yellen and all those people. Okay, so keep that in mind, right? That he will do things that will hurt you, and maybe will benefit you on the back end, but certainly in the here and now, if you got problems paying bills and you can't afford food and stuff, that's at least partly because of Jamie Dimon, right? But he's doing it to save you from Larry Fink. And essentially, it's to save the economy.
Yeah, and right? You could think of it as he's doing it to save himself from that.
Right.
And him saving himself means he's saving a lot of other people if they want to mirror him and act alongside him. He's not rigidly ideologically hostile to us. And honestly, I don't even think that Larry Fink necessarily is. I think that Larry Fink is just a mercenary, and he got his leash yanked when he came back groveling and sorry, my idea, my ESG idea. Yeah, I think that was a real bad idea. Sorry for that one, guys. But so you've said Trump is being installed, and we've kind of disambiguated that a little bit. But something I wanted to circle back to that you mentioned toward the top is that the votes still do matter, because Trump is being installed via the voters. The voters are a resource. They're an asset to be managed. And the voters as an asset group are being managed into the position where they install Trump. That would be probably a way if you wanted to autistically parse it out. But the votes still matter. Because if, just speaking at the absolute margins, if, I don't know, there was a 50 million deficit between Trump and Harris, well, then they're just going to have to roll with Harris. Like there's still some sort of legitimacy or some sort of conceivability to the whole process, the whole ritual, that no matter what the most powerful person in the world thinks, they still on some level need the actual votes to manifest themselves.
Look, in 2020, right? I'm speaking to our crew, right? And I'll be careful because I know this will be on YouTube. But in 2020, there's at least some talk about fortification and fortification going a certain way. But that only works if the person who was being fortified actually got votes. If no one voted for that person, then it wouldn't work, because everyone would be looking at each other going, well, I didn't vote for him. Did you vote for him? I didn't vote for him. I didn't vote, right? So votes were made. And in fact, where the fortification happened was only in a very few select places. It wasn't everywhere all at once. It was like in 2 or 3 states, really, and a few counties where all of a sudden the numbers went, boop, just enough over the line to be plausible. I have a term called plausible possibility. And that's what they're dealing with. That the fortifications or the thumb on the scale only works if it's pretty close to that number. And that people can go, yeah, okay. Right? And in 2020, a lot of things were going on. The flu season was a bad flu season. And people were a little bit panicked. And the entire 4 years of Trump was very upsetting for people. And people's entire paradigm of reality had already been thrown out the freaking window. So to get to that point, and then all of a sudden all these irregularities are happening, and even though it gets admitted in I think the Atlantic and a few other places after the point, people just go, okay, well, but and here's the justification a lot of people then make is, well, it had to happen. It's okay. Maybe it did or maybe it didn't, but if it did, it's okay because Trump evil. And this leads us into the other data point about Trump being installed and why it's not 2016 or 2020 anymore. Because now you have major media centers flipping like a dime. Mark Cuban, literally, last week, was on the Late Show with Stephen Colbert, doing a really cringe rap song about anti-Trump. And then literally, I think on Monday, puts out a statement saying he'd be open to working with Trump if he was asked nicely. Huh? What did you just say? It's like 3 days old.
It turns out this whole campaign that he's been on, his pro Kamala, like I'm going to be it's like his mimetic rivalry thing with Elon. I'm going to be Kamala's billionaire, And it turns out this whole thing has just been like, oh, I'm gonna build up myself some leverage by attacking you real hard, so that then you have an incentive to give me what I always wanted, which is recognition and a position of status within your administration. You can like go back 6 years, something like that, and Mark Cuban cannot slob hard enough on Don's knob. He is absolutely groveling, talking about how awesome and great and amazing he is and everything. But so then, if a guy's going to go through this whole gambit and go out here and shuck and jive for Kamala, with really the intention that he's like trying to build up some kind of political leverage to offer to Trump in return for him bringing him into the fold, that means deep down he recognizes Trump's eventuality as well.
Now, you might say that he's an opportunist, and I agree with you. Ratbag, slime.
Yeah.
I would say the same thing about Cenk Uygur.
Yep.
Right? And a Kasparian, slime, opportunists. But the opportunists are turning. So if someone has made a career, made millions of dollars, is a professional opportunist, that's their whole gig, and they're turning on a dime in their own way, they're managing this turn to basically support Trump or at least not counter-signal him, that's signal. The professional ratbags are turning. A complete 180. Or Mark Cuban 360s, I don't know. Going loop-de-loops. Bitch tits over there. Fine. Okay. Data point. Oh, we don't like them. They're horrible people. Uh-huh. I don't care. It's data. There's no morality in data. It's just data. It's info. It's intel. So I get the intel, I weed through it, and put it together. That's my job. As good as it is. So, sorry, I'm coughing here. Mm-hmm. Or maybe I should cut down on cigarettes. Not going to happen. So, let's put this other data point out. This got released by Mike Benz, Mr. Big Spook Man. And he's doing great work. Don't get me wrong. I'm not throwing shade at Mike Benz. Although what he basically tweeted out this week is confirmation that Stormy and I, and you, Matt, as well, are doing better intel than Mike Benz. Because someone tweeted out, I'm just reading it from my screen, let's get down to business here. We're talking about the CIA. Carlyle Group just bought Staple Street, now the owner of Dominion. And Mike Benz says, is this true, that Dominion is now owned by the Carlyle Group? I just note that Frank Carlucci, former Pentagon chief and CIA deputy director, was chairman of the Carlyle until 2005. Today, its CEO is a London banker, and its chair is a guy whose house Joe Biden stays in for Thanksgiving. Now, that guy is Berman. Sorry, I was find it here. It is. I'll get his name. I'll find it. Doesn't really matter. Because again, what Mike Benz is saying is that these are all compromised. Carlyle's compromised. Carlyle's going to throw it away from Trump and throw it to Kamala, right? Because they're all on Team Biden. I'll refer you back to that point where Biden basically screwed Carlyle Group by defunding, making sure they couldn't get any funding for Star Wars programs. Star Wars, by the way, isn't just iron domes. It's putting space lasers in the sky. You hear about those and all those crazy conspiracy things? Yeah, that was on the docket of Star Wars back in the 80s and early 90s. Hey, remember when Trump was in office and he put together a space force? And everyone was like, ha 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 ha. What are you going to do? Wage war in space? With satellites and stuff? Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
Who's that? Who likes that? Who's been funding that? Who has all their R&D and has put literally billions and trillions of liquid money into these programs and is just waiting to press a button and go and say go? The Carlyle Group, who just bought Dominion, and we've just said that Donald Trump is signaling pretty damn hard that he's pretty much pro Iron Domes, missile defense, all the rest of it. Getting out of the Middle East, getting out of these international wars, and maybe turning his attention to where? The southern border. Why? Well, gee, if you're America and you want to build an iron dome to protect yourself from invasion forces, who are you going to build it for? The snow monkeys up north or the cartels in the south who you're being invaded by? And that's been the big giant narrative push for the goddamn last year and a bit. Trump is being installed. The thumb is on the weight. This data point that the Carlyle group just bought Dominion, bad old Dominion, the one that was used in 2020 to get the... Yeah, they own that now. So vote. The ritual and reality are one. The will of the people will push this forward. They need the votes, right? They need the legitimate votes to crush them, to put Obama, who's freaking out and getting all squirrely. Yeah, because he's seeing all his 100,000 plate dinners go bye-bye. Because if the Democrats lose this and get trounced, they don't just lose an election. They don't just lose the Senate and Congress. DNC just doesn't lose funding. They get to push to the outer party. Where, hey, remember when George Bush Jr. had to leave office in disgrace, basically, because things were so screwed up and everyone was so damn against him that he had to go do watercolors? Do you think Obama wants to go sit and do watercolors in Martha's Vineyard? Probably not. But that's probably what he's going to have to be reduced to.
Shout out to Slosher here, $5 super chat. Canadian. I guess it's in honor of Jason. He says, doesn't matter if the other boxer is cheating with weighted gloves and is paid off the ref if you knock him out, if you KO him. They can't cheat too much. Yes. Thank you for the super chat, man. Here's the thing that I mentioned on the Astrolabe this morning, and maybe I'll bring it up on the Astrolabe again tomorrow. But from Nomos Events here, it says the U.S. is having 50% year-on-year cargo theft increases. 330 incidents costing $12.5 million in 2019 versus 925 in 2024 costing $76 million. Drivers have no stop rest stops. The entire U.S. overland logistics network is being destroyed by endemic theft. This is just one of a number of different things that are indicative of very strong cartel activity, disrupting U.S. supply chains, U.S. manufacturing, U.S. industry. So for guys whose interests, who their own personal economic interests are tied to American soil, this is an existential issue. This is why Timothy Mellon, big Texas oil money guy, is the number one donor. Very, very quietly, he's the number one donor to Trump's campaign, and he's been himself basically self-funding border wall construction because his name is attached to the soil. There's a tremendous amount of money and power and influence that never shows up in the public eye, that is now, in some cases, actually showing up in the public eye. But even if they weren't, they're still present there, and you just have to start tying these incentives together. And then it becomes clear that these aren't a bunch of random scattered data points. They're kind of like the seen the image of you have like the inside of the earth, and then there's this hand there with these fingers that are poking up above the surface. And you might think these are completely separate things, but you realize there's a hand underneath there that's uniting all of them. This is a large force. Now, here's the thing, is that these guys are not our friends. These are not our guys. These are not good people. And I've seen this thing that a lot of guys do where they go and they start looking into this kind of thing, and they're like, oh, well, that thing revolved around this guy, and this guy was bad, and look at these bad connections that he has, and look what sort of organization he was a part of, and these other terrible, awful things that they did. Therefore, this thesis can't be true. No, this is part of the thesis. These are not our guys. So Trump is being installed through us. But it's not us doing the installation. But a downstream effect of him being installed is that many of our guys are brought along with him. But the people who are doing this installing are not doing it for noble, patriotic, heroic reasons. They're trying to protect their own interests. And their own interests are directly orthogonal to the interests of the powers that have constituted what we've called the regime. They're forming a new regime for their own sake. And we have much more opportunity within that regime. And so we have an incentive in this particular case to go with the flow. But to also recognize this flow, recognize where this flow is going. Because now this is part of why I wanted to have this continued conversation with Jason. I was listening to a stream that you did a couple weeks ago, or 2 weeks ago, maybe, something like that. I remember I was driving through Michigan and it was like midnight and I was listening to it.
Yesterday, maybe timey-wimey, a year ago, today, this morning, right now.
Right. Yes. And you were talking about this particular thing where you were kind of you were using it as a bit of a like a stern, not a rebuke maybe, but like basically saying like don't get a big dick about this stuff. Like when Trump is elected, it's not going to be like, oh, we did it, this is us. No, like Trump is being installed, and it's good that he's being installed, and it's good for us to cooperate with that. But there's a deep, dark underbelly to this. There's a deep potential downside. And there's a couple of people who've pointed something out recently where they've said that Trump seems to have some kind of deep spiritual protection or a mandate. I've myself said that he's been granted a mandate. It's very clear that he is one of these monumental figures of history that's very clearly been granted a mandate. He is under spiritual protection. But the question is, which spirit is protecting him and toward what end? You've talked extensively about the vengeful son, the spirit of the vengeful son, which is the shadow of the spirit of the prodigal son. And so I wanted to posit this idea. This is what the idea you were sparking in my head as you were discussing this, was that he's being protected by both spirits because both spirits are really the same spirit. Because they travel together. Where the vengeful son goes, the prodigal son goes. Where the prodigal son goes, the vengeful son exists in his shadow. And both of these spirits are present. Both of them are going to be realized. And the real significant question is, which one are we going to embody ourselves?
Okay, let's talk about intentions and attentions. So I think I did a stream about this as well. I'm going to do writings about this because I think this is, you gotta have to work almost backwards and forwards and tangents, but you nail one thing down, and then a lot of other things start to make sense. I was just watching Cyprian on Mano's channel, the
Study of Stuff.
Study of Stuff. Thank you, and it was a really good conversation, and talking about how both of them had dabbled in hermetics. Sterling Waters is a very self-avowed Christian hermetic. And one of the things they touched on in that conversation is attention and intentions. And one of the conversations I've been having and kind of formulating and perfecting is this idea that, okay, so we say whatever we give our attention to, we begin to worship. We begin to fixate on. And that drives our worship. We become almost consumed by that attention because you have to be able to pay attention to it. One of the reasons why in the Orthodox faith specifically, they talk about always be praying, right? When Buck Johnson's, we had a conversation that's going to be going live on our channel this week. He went to Mount Athos and he said, when he's talking to some of the monks there, as they're talking to you, having just a regular conversation about the weather or whatever, you can see them moving on the prayer beads. So they're praying while they're talking to you. And I've tried to do this. I've been practicing doing this while I'm talking on stream. It's harder to do when it's like this, right? Two of us. It's a little bit easier, which is still really hard to do it when I'm just doing a monologue. And it's to have God being present, right? Always have your intention towards God. So I can give my attention to this screen, to this conversation, to talking about power, powers and principalities and all these things that you could look at and say, well, that's not Christian, right? That's not a proper attention for a Christian to talk about. But as long as your intention behind it is towards God, so I'm talking about this and I'm watching the screen and I'm looking at the mic and playing with audio stuff, but in the back of my head I'm trying to pray and keeping my attention and intention together, and in that God's on that royal path, in his frequency, then all things come together. And it allows us to have discernment, a self-discernment, that we don't have to keep calling up a priest about. We can start to get, once you start to get better and better at it, you start to get those little inklings of derivations, of pulls, of temptations. Or when you encounter something, you get to look at it and go, okay, wait a minute, whoa. Is this from above or from below? Is this serving my pride? Is this about vainglory? Is this about me? Or is this about God? Is this something about bigger? So when you examine these people, Friend or Fed, the series I do. We'll have to have a talk about that. Do a JD Vance before the election, and the series is basically taking one focal point of a person of interest and examining them. Doing essentially a dialectic almost, right? Friend or Fed is a dialectical show, but the show aims to do something bigger and better with that. The reason why I think you can look at a person is that we're basically, in some ways, trying to discern the intention. We're giving this figure attention and trying to kind of figure out in that conversation, whether deliberately or not, trying to discern their intentions by what they're doing, by what they're saying, by the effects they're having on other people, on history itself. And that's important. But it's almost like the essence of God. We may never know man's intention, his true intentions, what's truly motivating them. But we can only look at what they're doing, and even what they're doing may not be directly beneficial for us, may not be done for us. In this case, I'm a Canadian expat living in Australia. On a big level, the American election means nothing to me. It's not my president. I don't vote. I can't even vote in this country. I don't have citizenship. I can't vote, thank God. Right? But I may never get citizenship just for that reason. Be like, I don't know. Yarvin once talked about being an expat in your mind, right? Like you go to Costa Rica and you're living there. Well, you observe the rules. You figure out, what you can and can't do, and you know what they're kind of policing, and which soccer team to support, and that's it. Because you don't care. And that's lovely. I live in Australia, and people come to me and go, "What about this?" I'm like, I don't know. I don't follow it. Don't care. And so, on some level, the American election doesn't matter to me. But I'm a citizen of the world, and I'm a citizen of the Western world, of the Anglosphere, so it does matter to me. Because I also know that the President of the United States and America itself is a model for the rest of it. So what happens in America is going to, in some way, shape, or form, either happen here or cause a reaction here against it, for or against. So I'm saying all this to get to which spirit turned Trump's head. A lot of people going on about it was God. And we can say maybe the prodigal son is, in this parlance of the spirit of the age, maybe it was the prodigal son. Forcing Trump to return, repent, and redeem. Returning to the Father to repent and be redeemed by this miracle. Maybe that's true. I don't know. I'm not inside Trump's head. I can see what he's saying, and that seems to be true. Let's take the counter narrative. Maybe it's the vengeful son. Because maybe by saving Trump, something else happens, or allows for something else to happen, which will be really what the vengeful son wants. Because remember, this egregore, this zeitgeist, isn't just a collection of psychic energy. It's a summoning. The spirit is being summoned. It's already here. I get these very clear intuitions, and I'm very careful when I say this because I know it sounds woo and silly and crazy and stuff, so please dismiss me, okay? Completely out of hand. And I'm going to have a conversation with you off air about this, Matt. But I'll tell you this. About 2 weeks ago, and I shared this with Stormy briefly, my spiritual radar went off the freaking hook out of nowhere. I was doing the lawns, and I'm like, what is this? Like, it was like, I can't describe it. It's like standing inside of a radio wave where you're vibrating. And when I was watching Cyprian on Mano was on the study of stuff, Mano said that a few weeks before they recorded, I'm not exactly sure the time dating, but he was talking to Father Turbo Quails, and he had said, and Father Turbo said to him, yeah, you guys are going to start freaking out soon. Like, Cyprian's freaking out, you're freaking out. Something's happening. And I think that's around the same time. I'd have to talk to him to triangulate the time zone, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was in the same few weeks, and certainly in the month of October. He's here. It's here. The vengeful son is here. And he's waiting for the first stone. And when that stone is cast, by whomever it is, we will be in an age of total violence. And how that's directed and where that goes, I don't know. I can speculate. I've already speculated on the southern border, which I saw. Vivek talked about it when he was first running for president. And I think both of us, Matt, when we first saw them, were like, what's this guy? This is Patel talking about mobilizing the American military against Mexico. Okay. And now I'm looking like, oh, yeah, no, that's happening. Eric Prince, hi.
Yep.
Want to go on an adventure? Because they're going to have to direct it somewhere. Because it's here. And I think they know it too. Because the thing is, when I first started saying that, I remember saying it to Semiagog. You said it on Semiagog's show. And Semiagog, in the middle of another conversation, Semiagog was like, what is that? What did you just say? Because it has that grab. And it came to me. My brain put it together. But the data transmission came to me, and I just put it together and presented it. And I know what it is because I get drawn to it too. Like, whoa, that's something.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you call it a different thing. Sure. Call it whatever you want. I'm calling it the Vengeful Son. And it's here. And it's ready to kick off. And it's just looking for that stone. Now, another thing I've been saying. And this is going a little bit off topic with who saved Trump. In some ways,
this is exactly the direction that I was hoping to go.
In some ways, I don't think it matters.
Right. It doesn't.
Because ultimately, we are builders. I don't want to get into the ethno part of it. But we are builders. I've said this before about civilizational capital. We build. Why? Because we're builders. We don't throw stones. We need those stones to build. What are we building? Are we building it back better? No. Are we recreating it? Nah. We're building something that they can't understand. We're showing iPhones to Amazon tribes. We're going to build the good, the beautiful, and the true. It's been lost for generations, for longer than you've ever been alive, longer than your grandparents are alive. They've lost it. They were playing in the shadows. We're going to start. We're not going to finish it, probably in our lifetime. Maybe we finish some projects, but we'll be left things undone. And here's the thing I'm going to tell you, and this may sound like a black pill, but it's not. We are going to fail. They will tear it down. They may put it to a position where we have to tear it down so that they don't get it. Like the Moscow of old burning down Moscow, so Napoleon couldn't achieve it, couldn't take it. And he rose up on that hill and watched the city in flames and realized at that point he had lost. He could wage this war for 1,000 years against a people who will burn and salt their own earth. Why? Because we're builders. We'll build it again. We'll build it not just better, we'll build a new thing. Something glorious to behold. I see it as clear as my own reflection. I do. That's what we're being called to do. That's the prodigal son. So it doesn't matter. Let the vengeful son tear down what they're going to tear down. Tear down the walls of Jericho. Tear down everything around you. Set it on fire. Whatever. You don't do it. We don't do it. We're not going to sacrifice our souls for a minor victory, for a political win. What is this? For money, position, power. That's what they did. They sold you out for all those things. They made a deal with the devil, and that deal's coming due. So Satan is chasing out Satan. But we see Satan fall like lightning. I'm going to war. I'm at war right now. This is a spiritual war. It's been going on for a long time and will go on a long time past me. And it may claim my body, but it will not claim my soul. They can try to take it all. I'll give it to them. Free of charge. Take it. This means so much to you. Because when your backs are turned and you've moved on, I'll just build it again. Return, repent, redeem. Be the model that you want to see in the world. Redeem your father. Don't blame them. Be a better father.
The particular function that I think the Vengeful Son operates through, and the one that it is going to manifest itself through, because these sorts of spirits are tricky. They're clever. They're vast cosmic intelligences, to borrow a phrase, that are hell-bent on the destruction of humanity. They know how to induce us into destroying ourselves. And in inversion and contravention of the devouring mother, what the Vengeful Son will leverage is the desire for justice, the desire for conquer, the desire for war. It will subvert that righteous inclination, and it'll draw it into pursuing itself for its own sake, which becomes bloodlust. It becomes unhinged destruction. It becomes high time preference, short time horizon, rash indulgence of the passions. And so in doing that, it takes a good thing. It takes a beautiful thing. It takes a wonderful thing, God's justice, and it perverts it, turns it against itself. The desire for God's justice is righteous. This is the definition of taking the Lord's name in vain, is pursuing the gratification of one's own passions under the guise, or even under the self-deception, that you're doing it in pursuit of God's righteous justice. This is the Vengeful Son. This is the meaning of vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. This is why the greatest danger that lies ahead of us over the next, I don't know how long this is going to last. Could be months, could be years, likely years, at least decades. The greatest danger is not going to be the threat of totalitarian leftism. It's not going to be communist subversion. The greatest danger isn't going to be from outside the doors. It's going to be inside. The greatest danger is going to be the subversion coming up within your own soul and inducing you into cheerleading and even participating in acts that will forever damn your own soul. That is going to be the manifestation of the Vengeful Son. This is the thing that nobody sees coming, because this is how this sort of stuff operates. No one would have seen the spirit of the devouring mother coming, because they lived in the era of the tyrannical father. Experiencing the sudden exact opposite of what you've been experiencing, you would never expect it. And that's exactly how this is like, I was visualizing this when you were talking the other day about Pareto's residues, that the residue is like the leftover, the outside, the remainder, the remnant. There is always a remnant. And within that remnant becomes the seed of the new dominant. And within that, when that new dominant force is manifested, it creates its own remnant. And you got this cycle that's almost like I was visualizing it as like a snowball kind of that's rolling along. And it's constantly dropping off pieces of snow that themselves become the big snowball that eats the previous one. There's this constant cyclical thing that happens, because I talked about on the Astrolabe yesterday the finite versus infinite games. And way too many of our guys are looking at the current conflict, the current state of world history as a finite game, as if it's something to win, as if there's some point, there's going to be some apotheosis, some moment where victory is achieved or absolute defeat occurs. There will be no moment like that, because in every victory will be the seeds of the next defeat, that remnant that's left over, that stands in opposition, that becomes the intransigent minority around which everything else ultimately turns. And then that minority will be subsumed into the whole, and a new minority will be kicked off. And so human society will continue cycling through for who knows how long. It's an infinite game. It goes until it ends. But there is no winning it. Winning the infinite game is playing to keep playing the game. You're not playing to destroy the table. You're not playing to own the table. You're playing to be at the table. Because there's always going to be a table. And there's going to be different people who sit at the head of the table. That cycle is going to continue. What you're playing is an infinite game. You're playing to keep playing. And so in every moment, if you filter it through this lens, you'll recognize that tug, that pull to indulge your passions, to indulge yeah, justice. We got what's right. Yeah, they deserved it. That's that little perverse remnant that is subverted, that has gotten inside you, and it's tugging at you to manifest it more and more, because this spirit can't manifest itself. There's something unique and significant about humans. We are made in the image of God because we are that which manifests spirits into the world. With our behavior, with our choices, with our actions, they have to use us to manifest these things. So we get to choose. You want to know which spirit it was that turned Trump's head? It was both spirits. It was neither one. It's Schrodinger's spirit. It'll be decided in retrospect. We'll know someday which spirit it was. It's not determined yet. But each of us can play a little role in that. We talked about the idea of like the Caesar egregore, little micro Caesars that manifest the Caesar. It's the same phenomenon. Whether it turns out that the vengeful spirit was the one that turned his head, or the prodigal, the vengeful son, or the prodigal son, comes down to the choices and the decisions and the actions that we take every single day. And which spirit we feed, which one we manifest, which one we call to the surface, which one we indulge. But if we're building, if we are builders, if we are civilized, and we're building a civilization, we have to choose the spirit of life. You can't build a civilization on death. You have to choose the spirit of life, which is the prodigal son, which is returning and repenting and redeeming your father. And then in humility and repentance and self-sacrifice, laying yourself down for your people, bleeding yourself out for your people, to protect them, to promote them, to defend them.
To put it another way, because you said you can't build a civilization on death. Well, it's been tried.
Right.
Aztecs tried it. Now, so you can imagine 1,000 years, right, of sacrifice, human sacrifice, mountains of bones, just an unending slaughter of humanity, and all the time and attention, all the capital spent and justification spent to do that, and they were conquered over a weekend by a handful of Spanish conquistadors armed with God. Think about that. Think about what you're building. People have given me static, and I understand why. People trying to build big tents. And I've talked about, neo-pagans. And I delineate them into a few groups. And one of the groups I said, the academics. I would say semiagog would be one of these. And I love me some semiagog, so just let's clear that air. And I would put him more, and maybe because I'm biased because I like the man, but I would put him more into the academic zone. He's not out there sacrificing people to Odin or the wood spirits. And then you have the professional LARPers, who are also not really doing that, although they can be coerced into doing that, who just really are really gay for Hemsworth, who want to run around topless with a hammer, right? Or really into hemlock. They would have been Wiccans in the 90s. Or maybe they're Wiccans now. And then you have the true believers. And the problem is that those LARPers, once you LARP it enough, even if you're not a true believer, you become one. We've said this about the Church of Satan. Everyone's like, it's ironic, it's just atheists, pretending to do this to upset the Christians. I'm like, uh-huh.
There's no such thing as ironic Satanism.
Right. There's no thing as an ironic prayer. There's no such thing as an ironic sacrifice. You're doing it without knowing you're doing it. So I've said you're engaging in the data economy even if you don't know you're doing it. We're doing it right now. So if you're building something, you got to be careful with who you're building it with. Ask the Jews how well it turned out wanting a warlord instead of Christ. They asked for a Messiah, they asked for a Savior, they got one. Wasn't the one they wanted. Oh, not that one. They wanted the other one. The other one who got shellacked and didn't do nothing.
Schlonged.
The one that, by siding with him, your temple got burnt down, got engulfed. And then eventually, y'all got kicked out. And then flash forward 300 years later, and the Savior is sent, changes the entire Roman Empire. Changes from within. Leads to Western civilization as we know it. Oops. Just saying. That's why we don't throw stones. We build with them. And I say these things about people, and again, whatever, man. You guys do you. Right? You really want to praise Odin? Have at it. I can't stop you. But look into what you're doing. The Norse got conquered by the Christians, not the other way around. And it wasn't from lack of trying. They all bent the knee when they were given the word.
In fact, basically everything we know about them is from Christian sources.
Right. Miracles used to happen all the time. One of the things I've said about civilizational capital and what my idea of it is that the reason why we're trying to build towards a city of God, and I'm under no pretense that that's what we can build, but we're trying. We're doing our limited best to. You put that as the ideal. Ooh, scary word, but we're moving towards that. That's the model. And what is that? We don't know. We build through revelation, hinting at it, right? We're trying to isolate objectively what is the good, the beautiful, the true. Maybe that's part 3 of this talk. But as we're moving towards that, what we haven't been doing, the 20th century was really bereft of, are saints. I read the lives of the saints all the time. Used to be tons of them. Used to be churning out saints like crazy. Where are all the saints? No, I'm not saying there isn't any. I'm not saying the 20th century didn't produce any. Because I know I say this and someone's like, well, and the Wikipedia page. Like, scroll down. Where's the modern Saint Seraphim of Serov? Read his story. Where's that? So what we're trying to build in some ways is a civilization that can produce saints. Because what do the saints do? Well, they do things in their life and benefit us and perhaps reach theosis in some cases. St. Piosos, great elder, great source of inspiration and wisdom and guidance, true. But when they pass, when they repose, they pray with us. And in this army that we're collecting, in this war we're waging, we need all the help we can get. So I was an atheist for 32 years. Had a religious experience in 2020. Became observing Orthodox Christian. Was raised outside the church as a child. I have to get rebaptized and all the rest of it. I haven't really done my catechism. That's going to change soon. But in part of that, I've been observing things. So, in some cases, I go a little harder than even, people who are of the faith, or, full on the faith. Not because I have to, because I'm like, well, but I should be practicing this even though I don't have a priest and a bishop and all the rest of it. And one of the things I do is, of course, observe Great Lent. And last year, around day 3, I was taking it very seriously, and I got hit by a Mack truck of Dimon. Stuff like temptations that I hadn't had in forever. Suddenly just, lust, everything. Just, where the hell is this coming from? And it was so stark, so brutal, that I had no questions of what this was. It was like hands trying to push me off the path completely by day 3 of the fast. And I'm not perfect. Far from it. I'm very easily the worst Christian you'll ever meet. I make mistakes all the time. Made 10 today already. Probably made a few in this conversation. But I'm trying. I'm trying my best. And I'm discovering what my best really is. I haven't even hit my best yet. One of your premonitions, Matt, which I think is going to really bear out, especially with the Vengeful Sun, as it tears down things and tears down these illusions and puts the 20th century on trial. And we have a Western perestroika and glasnost, which is coming. Mark me on this. It's already started. When this happens, it will usher in an age of empire. And the American empire hasn't even started yet. There is an empire. And you should go to Gumroad. See? Salesman instincts right here. I got your attention. Now I'm going to sell you something. Go to Gumroad. Check out those conversations. Because yeah, there is an empire. That's why I called it the Shadow Empire. There is an empire. And it's global. There's a global government. It doesn't have to be formed by the WEF or whatever have you, or Davos. It's already around. It's already established. You just don't know it yet. And what they're basically saying is we're going to take that shadow government and an empire and formalize it and bring it out of the shadows as if we just created this new thing that never existed before. Oh, it's totally there. And its headquarters is not in D.C. Its headquarters is in the city of London. Now, people get tempted in this and go, aha, so it's all the city of London. And that'd be like saying the Vatican is Christianity, or the Vatican is Italy. It's like, no, it's there. And yeah, it's important. It's a node. But it's not the whole entire thing. It can move. It can go somewhere else. They don't want to. All their stuff's there. But if you think they wouldn't move to someplace else because they have to, why do you think all these billionaires are building bunkers? So, things to keep in mind. Reasons to buy the package. What would you do in 2019 differently if you knew exactly what 2020 was going to happen? Even if you couldn't have done anything differently. Like if you don't have the financial wherewithal, you didn't, you're stuck. You're going to have to live through 2020 exactly as you did, but you knew it all. I don't know about you, Matt, but it's given me an amazing peace of mind. Because when all the chaos hits, I'm not going to be going around going, what is going on?
Mm-hmm.
All that time and energy, all that stuff that I wasted for a good solid year. You know, just the cascade failures of reality that I went through. Well, luckily, once you do that once, you don't have to do it again. But now I have this information, and I'm watching, and I'm looking. And so I can say things like Trump's being installed and mean it. And if I'm wrong, I've earned the right to be wrong because I've done the work. I've squeegeed that noose a little bit, getting that transmission in.
There's a lot of different. There's about the different levels to the what's happening and what we're observing, and the different. There's this tendency, I think, with this part of it's something having to do with liberal modernity and kind of living in the eternal now, and over-indexing on the anticipation of some specific time point in the future where everything happens, or all is determined, or there's some ascendancy point, and which has something to do, I think, with this linear concept of history versus the cyclical models. And everyone there's this sense of everyone just waiting for that moment where that thing happens, where and then all the different actions are all separate from one another. There's the political, and there's the economic, and then there's the spiritual, there's the religious, there's the social, there's the cultural, and you can't over-index completely on any of these. They're all moving sliders in one domain, move sliders in other domains. They're all constantly moving. They're constantly morphing and adapting. And so as Christians, we can't forsake the other domains, just not be there, just be, just kind of carried along. There are particular Christians who are focused in that way. We call them monks. They're the ones who go withdraw themselves from the rest of the world, and they spend all of their time in prayer and service. But we're not all called to be monks. There's Christians are still like normal people too, that have normal jobs, that get involved in different industries. Yeah, I would be terrible. Way too lazy.
They'd be like, wear sandals. I'm like, no.
Yeah, right. At least they wouldn't make you wear shorts.
This is one good data point. One thing I'm like, because I'm not saying it's impossible that I know my future is with the church in some way, shape, or form. I don't know which position, and we'll talk about it after we get off here. But I've played around with the idea of maybe it is priesthood. Who knows? And I'm like, well, those I like the fashion.
But so Christians are still called to be like part of the world, in the world, but not of it. So we need Christian military people. We need Christian politicians. We need Christian business leaders. We need Christian plebs. We need Christian aristocrats. We need Christian engineers. Like, all of those roles all matter. And the people who are in those roles, they matter. What they're doing, what they're focused on, where they're directing their intention and their attention. All of these different domains, they all matter, which is why you can't completely over-index on one to the diminishment of all the others. There's like plates that we have to carry here. But I think it's interesting that Christianity is always identified, particularly with the end times, is always identified as a remnant. It's like the leftover. It's the minority versus the majority. That will always be there.
The builder's stone that was rejected.
Yes. So when we build, we are building in all of these domains. We're building cultural capital. We're building financial capital. We're building economic capital. We're building spiritual capital. We're building social capital. We are becoming the new American aristocracy. That's our calling. which means we have to behave like aristocrats even if we aren't. We have to LARP it. There's some of us, the great thing about the internet is you get all these different classes all mashed up into the same places. So you can have the rich guy and the poor guy and the successful guy and the unsuccessful guy. They can all form into like the same group. It's also the worst thing about the internet. There's many great paradoxes. But part of the reason why we don't have a civilization, why our civilization has been lost and must be recovered, is because of the absence of people who view the world and interact with the world like aristocrats, who are able to understand things on a comprehensive level and also feel a sense of duty and attachment to the land that they're in and the people that they're from, and who are held to a standard of honor and tradition, and who are building for the future, who are making babies, who are making business deals, developing social networks vertically and horizontally. And now we have the opportunity. See, this is we've talked about kind of the dark underbelly of what's coming, but then here's the brightness on the top, which is that there's going to be tremendous opportunity to build these kinds of networks. It already exists, and it's only going to increase. Because in the same way that there's not going to be any sort of like specific point where we've reached the top, there's also not going to be any specific point where we've reached the bottom. It's not like there's going to be this never-ending trajectory downward. There's rises and there's falls and there's ups and there's downs. And we've been on a downward trajectory for a while. But there's an upward trajectory coming too. It's very easy to go through a dark decade and then enter a decade of light and look back and be like, oh, wow, that was really dark. And then the darkness and the light, they both coexist. They both can exist at the same time. Because one person's decade of horror couldn't be another person's decade of prosperity and success. It doesn't necessarily have to be correlated.
Can I just jump in here for a quick second? So part of my thing with the spirits, one of my focal points is the Tyrannical Father spirit. I would say that started in the beginning of the 20th century. So World War I, Great Depression, World War II, that was a spirit that was abiding during that time period with many downsides. The image I always have that is Saturn, right? The Greek and Roman god who classically warred against the Titans, who was his father.
Kronos,
took him out of action, claimed the throne of the world, and ushered in a golden age, a great golden age for everybody. Everyone prospered. But during that time period, Saturn being worried about being betrayed as he had betrayed his father, began to eat his young, who was his wife, Gaia. Right? And she would birth these children, and he would eat them. And to the point where Gaia got so concerned about this, and so upset about his tyrannical nature towards the family, towards her children, that she tricked him with her son Zeus in the Greek tradition, Apollo in the Romans, and gave Apollo a stone to feed. She fed it. Anyway, it doesn't matter, right? Tricked him and takes out Saturn, and Apollo takes his place. So you think of the tyrannical father ushers in a golden age, but fears betrayal, eats his children. Ushers in a betrayal of his wife, of the feminine spirit, devouring mother, who comes in the 60s. And remember, this was a big point. And I grew up in the 70s, and there was tons of ads about this, about women's hospices to protect them from getting beat up by their husbands and by men. And that was a real thing. I saw it with my own eyes, not with my mother, but with other people. Friends of my mom would come by for coffee with a black eye, and what happened? Oh, I fell down the stairs again. So that's real. That was true. The men, my grandfather's era, came of a time through 2 world wars, a Great Depression. They were broken. They had this golden age, but they were hollowed out. They were the essence of toxic masculinity. And then their children, the boomers, well, those Men modeling their fathers, seeing that their fathers had been distant or removed, or maybe in some ways great and wonderful. My grandfather was great and wonderful in many ways, but had his own issues, which I only know through story. So this modeling continues. What happens? Well, the devouring mother is summoned to respond to the tyranny of the father. Bad man. And she collects her children, protects her children, but protects them so much she smothers them and leads to derivations. Right? What is she doing to men? Weakening them, making them into women. In one way,
cutting off their genitalia.
Right? Mutilations. Just the way Saturn mutilated his father.
Mm-hmm.
And he was mutilated as well. He's gilded. So, what begets this? The vengeful son. And I can prophesize that there will become a golden age. It'll be a golden age of a Luciferian spirit. Liberalism is Luciferian. That's not one of my definitive statements that people don't like. Because you hear that and you go, well, but hang on. We can rearrange things, right? We can keep some of this stuff. No.
It seems so obvious to me.
Right. No. The whole thing. This too? Yeah. But what about... Got to reject it. So, to go on to what Matt's saying, and this is a bit of both, right? The classic Orthodox and but. Or. What is it? What is
both
it?
and.
Both and, thank you. I'm getting old, man. I'm just happy to be here. So the both end of the situation is, yes, there will be a golden age. Probably spanning the whole West. They'll go through some very difficult times. We'll emerge, and there'll be an amazing time. Buy up all this land on the cheap and all this great stuff. And maybe people will choose that, just as they did past the Great Depression. And those men sold out their daughters. How do they sell out their daughters? Well, by letting them wear miniskirts. By letting them join the workforce. And I'm a father of a young girl. 4 years old. She's headstrong as hell. She's gonna be trouble. And that's partly I want to raise a well-mannered monster. I'm doing a good job. Success on all fronts, and that's why I'm starting to, I think my hairline's going back a bit. But so it's the world we live in. It's the world we inherited. You got to deal with the is. But again, those men allowed the devouring mother to take hold. Now you might say, well, it's foregone conclusion. It's like, yeah, but their actions led to it. Their actions led to that reaction. And even if you say that they built this wonderful system, yeah, but they didn't pass it on very well, did they? They weren't good models. You don't get the boomers with good models. You want to blame the boomers for everything? Oh, they're the worst. They learned that behavior from something. When you get older, for your younger viewers out here, you'll realize something. As you get older, and especially after you have children, you become more like your parents. You begin to default back to what you know, because you have to, because you don't know what the hell you're doing, and you're screwing up all the time. And in some ways, you have to screw up. You take this perfect child, this innocent being, and you have to almost layer them with these defenses because they're young and impressionable and in danger all the time. So you almost have to make them more suspicious. It's a horrible thing when you realize that that's what you're kind of doing with your kid. But you have to, because there's going to be a time when you're not around and they need to know what to do or, what not to do. So you build up, you're part of this process of building these layers. But eventually they're going to hopefully get to a point where they get to a point in their life where they can strip away those layers And that's what the church does. Along the royal path, you'll encounter yourself, but your true self, because things begin to die and fall away from you, like garments of skin.
Like Eustace from the Voyage of the Dawn Treader, as he's the dragon and he's clawing the scales away.
Mm-hmm. So, rejoice, there will become good times. But in those good times, don't get distracted.
Mm-hmm.
What are we doing? And then what? Always answer the and then what. To get topical, sorry for a second. Tim Pool just quit IRL, whatever, right? That's the big news of the day. Because he never answered the and then what's. He just kept doing stuff. And I think he got to a point where he was realized, like, okay, and then what? Do this again. Do this more. For what? Till you die? You're going to be the beanie guy? Like, when you're 90? What are you doing? Now, maybe, God bless Larry King. He did it right up till the day he died, pretty much. But that's a different sort.
He's the exception that proves the rule.
Right. Most don't do that. Or they do try to do that, and you become Dan Rather.
Peter Jennings.
Sad. Yeah, exactly. Take shortcuts. Tenet Media, that whole thing. Shortcut. Offerings. And you might say, it's very nice. I was looking at the Tenet Media thing in part of that story. And you know that Dave Rubin, he was getting $100,000 or something like that.
A week?
$400,000. Yeah, a week. $100,000 a week for like a
video
month
a week.
for 4 videos. Right.
Yep.
Almost $500,000. Dave Rubin quality videos. And you read that and you're like, damn, I'm doing things wrong.
Yeah.
What am I doing wrong? But then you snap to it and you're like, no, that's just what I'm doing right.
Right.
Because I'm still succeeding. And look at and whatever I need, I just keep getting what I need. And it's like focusing that intention and attention. And as you bring that into focus, and you realize and then you start answering the and then what's into an absolute lifelong total meta goal, let's say, well, then all things begin to focus. And that's when you can really start praying and asking for things. Because it's not just give me what I want, give me my gibs. Because you can get those gibs, but not from. And you'll know it when you're given from above.
Mm-hmm.
Because oftentimes it comes with a bit of sacrifice. It doesn't come easy. But when you get it, you know it. And that's what my work and everything else is now directed towards. I'm not trying to convert people. Well, that'd be nice. But go at this any way you want. It's psychological. It's a trick of the mind. It's a chemical okay, sure, great. So get your chemicals in line, man. Move your chemicals around. I don't know.
Yeah, move your chemicals around.
Manifest that. Sure. Call it something else. Call it your own thing. Brand it your own thing. Go make millions doing whatever. Sure. Here, I give it to you. Go do your thing. Because I also know that quite often I see people take things and go off on things. And I'm like, that's not it. That way leads to ruin. I know you think you're doing the right thing or you think you're being smart, but I'm telling you, I can see exactly where you're going. Because you know why? Because that tugs at me too.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm constantly having to bat it away. Because I want those things too sometimes. And it can't be about that. It's got to be about this. And I'm sorry, I know sometimes critics tell me, like, I was in Buck's, sorry, maybe we can wrap this up a little bit, but I'm getting off topics now. But I was in Buck's chat for from one of his premieres and chatting about something in Christianity. And one of the commenters was like, can you be more succinct? I'm like, my response was like, lol, like literally no.
A biological impossibility.
You have no idea what you just asked.
So I guess to be succinct on your behalf, the long and short of this is Trump is being installed, and this is it's not the end. It's not even the beginning. It's just a data point. It's a step along the way. It's a very important one. It's a very exciting one. It opens up so many opportunities. We learned so much. We're through this process. I remember watching. I'm trying to wrap in here. I'm spinning off into something else, but
as we do.
I remember the 2016 election made a bunch of people's careers. There was a bunch of people who came up because of it, and then went on to, like, in media, they went on to, like, that became the thing that made them. That's kind of a microcosm for when you have a big seminal moment like this. It matters. Like, it's really important. There's a both and thing here. Like, it matters and it doesn't. It's a massive seminal moment, and it's also just a step along the way. You have to be able to hold both of these in your head at the same time. Recognize the significance of the moment. Be prepared to take advantage of the significance of the moment. Learn what the significance of the moment has to teach you. But then also recognize that this is just one little step along the way, and that there is a great long life ahead of you, and there's a great big world out there, and there's so much possibility and opportunity, and yet the time is short. Both of these things are also true. So every single thing that you do matters. We'll have so much room for activities. That's right. Jason, tell the people where they can find you.
Let the people know.
Let the people know.
Mironchuck Now. Used to be 2-Bit Podcast. Now it's Mironchuck Now for all the reasons I've detailed at the start of the show. God bless everyone who's stuck out this long, and thank you for paying attention to my rambleness. Over on YouTube, over on X, over on Spotify, and all the audio places. And on Substack, depending on when you're listening to this, I had a week where October's been a weird month. Lots of things have happened. So it has disrupted my normal patterns, but their new patterns have emerged. Ooh. And new projects are developing. Of course, you can always go to Gumroad and buy the Tales of the Shadow Empire. That's an ongoing series. I don't know how long it'll go, but it'll go for a bit. And then I have other ideas for more series coming up as well. And so you can always get that. $40 helps me pay my bills and put food in front of the Mironchuck's household. I also will be investing a lot of money for future projects, and especially into data cinema. Go follow me on all the platforms to find out more about that, because that's very exciting. And yeah, and then I show up on Matt's stuff. I know I'm in the Matt Kingpill Discord sometimes. I used to be there a lot more. Now I'm been busy, but I do pop in and do one of these where I just talk unabridged and talk over everybody and shove everyone around. I'm not drunk anymore, so that's an improvement. But the monologuing shall continue, god dang it, until someone can shut me up. So
well, if you'd like to join the Kingpill Discord, then go to kingpill.com. That's the place to do it. This stream here, we're doing it live right now for YouTube members, but also for anyone in the Kingpill Discord, they also get access to a live stream from the private Telegram channel. So if you're listening to this later on and you want to be able to get these live and in person, then, well, I guess not in person, but as close to in digital person, then you can either become a YouTube channel member for $5 a month, or you can join the Kingpill Discord, kingpill.com, and you could join the private Telegram channel from that as well. And what was the other thing I was going to say? Also, kingpilled.substack.com. That's where I'll be uploading this first to go to the Substack subscribers, and then it'll go out to Gen Pop here probably next week sometime. So if you're listening to this on the podcast later on, do me a favor and leave us a rating and a review, hopefully 5-star rating. Help us on that algorithm so we can kind of grow the actual podcast thing at the same time, and be on the lookout for a project that we're working on associated with Kingpilled, in a certain sense, but we're building something big. Jason's got his thing he's building. We've got our thing we're building. 2025 is going to be an epic year. So just be on the lookout for that. You can follow me at Real Kingpilled or join the Kingpilled Discord to keep up to date on the progress of that project. For now, we are going to sign off. Appreciate you folks. Hit the like button on the way out, and we will catch you guys.